Are you considering divorce? Are you dealing with it now? Are you on the other side and not sure what comes next? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show with your host, Lisa C. Decker.
Welcome to today's show, everyone. We're so happy to have you. My name is Marcella Craig. I am Lisa Decker's executive assistant and the producer of the show you're watching today. Just to introduce our host, Lisa is a certified divorce financial analyst. She's also a real estate collaboration specialist in divorce. And Lisa is the CEO and founder of both Divorce Money Matters and the organization that is bringing you today's show, Divorce Town USA. So welcome, Lisa. What can we expect today?
Thank you, Marcella. I love doing this show with you. Today, we're going to talk about May being Mental Health Month. The entire month of May is devoted to mental health. This is a nationally recognized month. And I think we can all appreciate the profound effects that divorce has on all our mental health, whether you're going through it personally, whether you're a family member watching a family member dealing with it, whether you're a child of a grown child of parents going through it, or whether you're a professional that deals with people in divorce. It can have an emotional effect on all of us. So how can we benefit from valuable life lessons that divorce can teach us without getting weighed down by the mistakes of the past or the trauma that may come with it? Well, today we have a special guest, very special guest, Sherry Hardin, a longtime friend and colleague. She is a licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist in Decatur, Georgia, who has certifications also in divorce coaching and divorce transition and recovery coaching. And she is a longtime Divorce Town member who works with clients going through any stage of divorce, anywhere from making the decision to divorce, to healing and redefining life on the other side. She also helps couples who want to work on improve their marriage. And she can also talk with us about discernment counseling. I also love that work that she does. And when not working with clients, she loves finding opportunities to travel and see new places. Woo, that sounds like fun. So Sherry, welcome so much to today's show. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here and really excited to talk about this really important topic.
It is. It really is, because we want folks to get healing through this process, because it can be extremely emotional time in someone's life. And if you don't do the healing that you need, it can continue on the mistakes and the hurts of the past. So to have a better future, why is it important to learn from our past? And can't we just leave the past and move on? Isn't that the point of getting divorced?
That is such a great question. And that is what so many of us think, is that once the divorce is done, we, get a fresh start. And in many ways we do. But what a lot of people don't know is that while the divorce rate for first marriages is around 50%, the divorce rate for second marriages is 70%. And that goes up with every subsequent marriage. And so what we know is that if we don't do the work of healing or really looking at what went wrong in the marriage, then we're really very likely to either repeat that in the next one, or to kind of unknowingly attract a partner with similar qualities. And so the whole thing kind of gets played back out again. And, even just from our first marriage, we can learn ways of coping from the problems that were in that we might carry those forward as well. And so we don't want to do that, because that can also just create a whole new set of problems. So this is why it's important to really look at all of this stuff and do that healing and growth work.
Absolutely. Yes. You don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. You don't want to continue to move into new relationships and create the same kind of drama and trauma. So that is vitally important. You're right. What about people who were not at fault in their marriage ending. I hear people say that, this is really not on me. This is my spouse is a louse, and they go on. And sometimes that really is true, but isn't there some part that each spouse plays?
There is, and there's a couple of things that I want to say to this. One is that, well, three things. One is that most of us do feel like, our ex was the one at fault for the divorce. So that's a pretty common stance to hold. Sometimes, your spouse did what was truly doing some pretty egregious things that they did not address, and the marriage was not going to be tenable no matter what you did. And situations like that are if there's abuse or addiction that go untreated and unaddressed. Also, if there are affairs, like the 3 A's, affairs, abuse, and addiction, if those continue without getting treatment or getting addressed, or the affairs ending, or whatever, betrayals may be going on without those ending, then that no marriage is going to thrive under those conditions. And but living with that stuff, and we can adopt behaviors that help us cope, that then are not helpful later on. So if our spouse is having affairs, or cheating, or committing betrayals of any kind, that can result in a sense of trauma, or feeling very hypervigilant or overly suspicious. And if we don't do that healing work, then we're likely to take that suspiciousness into the next relationship and see lies where there may not be any, and then make accusations that could drive the new partner away. And so it's not your fault that you're feeling that way, but there's still healing work to be done, because it leaves that residue. If there's if your spouse has addiction, then even if you don't have any tendencies towards codependent behavior, it's very natural to then maybe develop some controlling behaviors or some enabling behaviors, things that just are like a natural product of living with someone with addiction. Mm-hmm. And again, if we don't recognize those and heal that, then we could very easily take that into the next relationship. And living with abuse, if a spouse is abusive, mm-hmm. we might go into extreme conflict avoidance as a matter of survival. And that's helpful when living with abuse. But, in a healthy relationship where there's not abuse, it's important to be able to have the difficult conversations and not fear conflict and be in that avoidant position. So the other piece that I want to mention is that even if our spouse hasn't done really egregious things, even, that everybody, we all have our own contribution to the condition of our marriage and why it ends. May not be 50%. It could be 99%, 1%. But when we're able to and willing to identify our percent, even if it's small, then we set our next relationship up for a much better chance of success, so that we're not, continuing those behaviors that contributed to the problems.
Mm-hmm. I think that's with anything in life, right? Any relationship that we all play a part, and especially so in marriage and divorce. So that's some great advice there. So how does someone identify their role in all of this? What you said makes so much sense. Sometimes it's hard to see what our own role was, especially if your ex really was a louse, right? So how do you figure mm-hmm. out what their contribution to ending the marriage was versus yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here I'm going to do a screen share. Whether your spouse is doing something egregious or not, whether these are things, behaviors you brought in to the marriage that you learned in your family of origin, or whether they're ones you picked up in the marriage. This is a nice way that I think of to help figure this out. So let me share my screen.
And I'm going to go off screen while you do this, so you have full screen here.
Okay. All right. So hopefully, can you all see this?
If I can hide myself.
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, great. Okay, so this comes, Terry Real is one of my favorite well-known adult couples therapists and authors. And he came up with what he calls the 5 losing strategies. They are all behaviors that we pick up somewhere along the way to cope with whatever situation we're in, whether it's family of origin, whether it's in our marriage. But we often don't realize that we're doing them. And this is a handout that I use with my couples, and it can be very eye-opening to kind of even realize what we're doing. And I want to present this. I really want you all to hear this is without blame, because you know, all of us show up somewhere on this, you know, myself included. I've had my own of these to work on. And so it's just really about self-awareness and really embracing this as a learning and growth opportunity. So the 5 losing strategies are having to be right, trying to control your partner, unbridled self-expression, retaliation, and withdrawal. And so I want to just go through the examples, because sometimes just hearing these titles don't always seem super clear as to what they could mean. So I've got a lot of examples here, and I'm certain there are many more that I have not even thought of to include on this list. But being right can be things like getting defensive, denying your partner's experience, telling your partner what they feel, like you're angry or you're whatever the feeling is, telling them what they feel rather than asking them, having to be right, competing, analyzing your partner, giving them some analysis of what you think is going on with them rather than asking them what they think. This is probably the one I see come up so like universally, is the "you said, no, I didn't" argument, or the "you did, no, I didn't" argument is incredibly common. And probably, you know, anybody listening has had that at one time or another. And as you know, it just is, that's an argument that goes nowhere. So, and that's all about 2 people who are having to be right. Having a closed mind is another demonstration of having to be right. And then giving unsolicited advice is something that people often don't realize. Is it's like, well, I know better than the other person does. What they're doing is wrong, but what I know is right. And so I have the right to tell them that, is another way of being right, which moves into the next category of control, because giving unsolicited advice also falls under that category as well. But where we are trying to, even if we don't realize it, trying to control our partner. So this is common. If you're having thoughts, or, you know, telling one of your friends, if he would just do this, or if she would just stop doing that, then this relationship would be great. We're trying to control who they are. If we're interrupting them when they're trying to talk, if we're nagging, this is a big one, rather than, you know, asking or getting buy-in or getting an agreement for something, for nagging them. When you have to have it your way and there's no give. Lying is a big one. If you really want something and your partner's not going to give it, then you're just going to lie about it to make sure that you get it. Intimidating or dominating, micromanaging, manipulating, refusing to take no for an answer. Sometimes in a marriage, the answer is no. Whining or coming from that victim position, or poor me, the self-pity, is a way to manipulatively try to control what the other person is doing. Over-functioning is also another form of control. It's stepping in and doing things for our partner when they're really capable of doing them for themselves, but we just don't think they're doing it well enough, or the way we'd like it, or fast enough. That's a form of control. Treating our spouse like a child, and people pleasing. And I threw this in because I really think that this can fall on either side of control. It's you know, doing what other people want us to do and we don't want to, is a way of controlling them, because then we're keeping them happy with us. So it's not being genuine. And the flip side of that is that we're allowing ourselves to be controlled if we're operating from a people-pleasing position. All right, so I'm going to move into the next three, which all have a little bit of overlap to a degree. Unbridled self-expression is, so let's talk about that for a minute. That is really kind of the bigger, tends to be bigger, more aggressive. I'm going to tell them what I think, and I don't really care how it, how it hurts them. So it's really focusing on the other person and going after them. Blame, finger pointing. It could be name calling, belittling, diagnosing them, telling them, oh, you're narcissistic, or you're borderline, or you're bipolar, or whatever. Yelling to drown each other out, which is obviously an argument. Throwing tantrums, going on the attack, being condescending, putting your partner down or criticizing them. Criticizing being different from complaining, where complaining is letting them know something they did isn't okay with you, but criticizing is really going after their personality, telling them there's something wrong with them. Oversharing can be unbridled self-expression. There are thoughts that we have that don't serve any usefulness to say to our partner other than to be hurtful. Being judgmental. If we're, coming from an attitude of judgment, we're looking down on them. Talking about their family, putting down our partner's family or close friends. Verbal or physical abuse are super obvious, big, unbridled self-expression. Indignant anger. So having that attitude of, you're treating me egregiously and I'm, not going to stand for it. And I'm going to feel free to tell you in whatever way that might hurt you. Or complaining about your spouse to your family, where you just let it fly without really realizing that you're affecting the relationship that they have with your spouse and damaging that. So these are just some examples of unbridled self-expression. They tend to be more obviously damaging. So let me move into retaliation, because that can be either big and loud, or it can be more subtle. But retaliation is really from the vantage point of wanting to strike back or get revenge or hurt the other person. So some examples are sarcasm. It's, like veiled as a joke, but it isn't. Using the silent treatment, refusing to talk to them with this hostile, this air of hostility, making fun of your partner, being stubborn and unwilling to budge, just as a way to show them. Using contempt. Contempt is really looking down your nose and perceiving your partner as less than, as someone who's inferior. Shaming your partner, holding on to grudges, seeking conflict or picking fights with them just because you're mad, rejecting them openly with the purpose of hurting them, withholding sex as a way of hurting them, being passive aggressive, or hurting them with the intent that they will kind of get it or know how that know how you feel. These things always tend to backfire and make a relationship worse. And then withdrawal. So withdrawal can be anything from pouting, sulking, keeping secrets from your partner. Withdrawal could be drinking too much or abusing drugs, escaping into TV, porn, gambling, spending, escaping into work, stonewalling. Now, stonewalling can be either refusing to talk or being flooded with emotions that you can't stay present in the conversation and talk. So that's just another way of withdrawal. Avoiding conflict, resentful compliance, that's going along with something you really don't want to do, but being mad about it and making it clear that you're mad about it, but not with your words. Leaving or walking out without taking a time out and letting your partner know what you're doing and that you'll be back. Under functioning, just refusing to participate in maybe household chores or the running of the family. Or ceasing to share parts of yourself, of your life, or stopping to have affection or sex. So these are all things that we develop at one time or another as a way of coping with either family of origin or stuff in the marriage. And they do help protect us for a period of time, but when we continue or take them into the next relationship, they just create their own problems. They don't help. They cause trouble. They make things worse rather than addressing things in a really healthy way. So, all right, I'm gonna come back to the screen.
While you do that, I do want to let everyone know that anyone that is watching this broadcast or replay, if you would like a copy of that, Sherry has offered to make it available as a handout to anyone who would be interested. So you can email us through Divorcetown USA. You can also email Sherry directly through Divorcetown USA to get a copy of that handout. Thank you, Sherry.
Absolutely, yes, and thank you for saying that. You know, and I do want to throw in and just kind of something that Lisa touched on is that, and what I was mentioning before is sometimes we're affected by things our partner does, by affairs, by abuse, and if you're experiencing trauma, if you notice that you're just extra vigilant or extra afraid, if you're having nightmares, if you're having trouble sleeping, if you're having any of the symptoms of trauma, that these are normal to experience after things like abuse, or having, experienced betrayal from your partner, and to please, reach out and find a therapist to help you work through those. That's not your fault, but you deserve to be free of those symptoms and not have to live that way.
And the sooner you do it, folks, the sooner you recover, the sooner you heal. Because those things that we tend to disregard, that we tend to push under the rug, have a way of resurfacing later, even if it's not our mental health and our physical health. A lot of our physical problems can come from the stress and the mental matters that we don't deal with. So make sure that you are working with someone who can help you find the tools to deal with these things, to heal from these things.
Absolutely.
That's a great list that you put together there, Sherry. I mean, and those definitely are not helpful behaviors. And, a lot of people do get locked into those patterns when they're getting divorced. It's just what it's all about. So how can people see what their contribution was? What if they can't see that clearly? And what do they do to prevent taking those behaviors, those reactions into their next relationship, or repeating that with other relationships should they choose to stay single?
It's a great question. If reading over the list, if you don't see yourself jumping out in any of those things, or if you're not identifying trauma within yourself, find a good therapist who can help you really look back over. Sometimes we have blinders to certain things that we maybe grew up with, and we choose partners that have red flags and we don't see the red flags because we those things were normal in our family growing up. So that could be another piece at play here too. So, please feel free, reach out to a therapist who can help you sort out, what your pieces are to heal or to learn, of course, correct. And then so I'm just going to go through those 5 losing strategies and talk about some things if you identify yourself in one of those. But first I want to say to please make sure that you have compassion for yourself as you do this, that none of this is intended to shame or for you to beat yourself up, that we all fall into some of these behaviors from time to time, and it's not helpful to beat yourself up for them. That it's just to recognize and say, all right, yeah, I did this or I did that, and now it's time for me to look at that, take responsibility, and make a shift. So I just want you to offer yourself some compassion. The other thing about a trauma that I didn't mention is there are support groups for domestic violence, for partners of abuse. So Al-Anon, the domestic abuse national hotline are ways to find those resources. Okay, so for the 5 losing strategies, if you recognize yourself that you have to be right, then it's important that you begin to recognize that being right means you're not going to be in a relationship. It's going to like go sideways into arguments. And that instead you want to recognize its perspective. And one of the best relationship skills you can have is holding your perspective and your partner's perspective at the same time. They don't cancel each other out. They both coexist. And when you can understand your partner's subjective experience and they can understand yours, you can work through anything. So stop needing to be right and get willing to listen and understand where your partner's coming from. They'll be able to do the same for you. Okay, for control, usually when we're being controlling, we're feeling powerless or we're feeling entitled. And so shifting out of that and learning how to have an equal adult to adult relationship where instead of control, we bargain for what we want and we negotiate for win-win solutions. That solves so many things, that when we're controlling, we're thinking that we're going to lose if we don't take control of our partner or the situation. And we don't want to win and them lose. We want for us both to win. And so that involves negotiation and bargaining. So learning how to do that. If you recognize yourself in unbridled self-expression, this also has to do with feeling entitled and feeling powerless. And so we've got to get louder or say harsher things in order to be heard. And so number one is learning emotion regulation. That instead of going to that place of anger and rage and expressing that is to bring ourselves down from that place of aggression and learn just how to be assertive for saying, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I am asking for, instead of shouting or all the things we talked about. So learning that emotion regulation. And then learning healthy communication and assertiveness skills. There are anger management classes. There's something called DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, with wonderful groups to help learn that emotion regulation. And then assertiveness classes or communication as well as negotiation. So those are the things to learn if unbridled self-expression is your go-to. Similarly for retaliation, it's learning assertiveness skills. Instead of having to punish or lash back, it's learning to say, this is what I'm experiencing and feeling, and this is what I want. This is what I'm asking for. And it's learning healthy boundaries. It's learning where to say no. Is going to be really helpful. And then for withdrawal, again, learning assertiveness skills. It's bringing yourself up from powerlessness or fear or shame, again, to then advocate for yourself. So learning how to soothe yourself if you're afraid to go into what you feel might be conflict. It's going to be some emotion regulation too, but it's learning self-soothing so that you can then advocate for yourself and ask for what it is that you need with those good assertiveness skills. And so, yeah, if you are having trouble with any of these, reach out to a good therapist in your area who can help you. Therapists who are trained in divorce recovery or who are trained in relationships are going to be great options. I would look for someone who specializes in those areas.
That's great information. This has been a fabulous show, Sherry. I love the suggestions. I love how you open people's minds up to what they might be doing wrong, how they reacted to something, and how to fix that, how to heal from that. This is fabulous work that you're doing, and we're grateful to have you as a member of Divorce Town and as a guest on our show today. Thank you so much. And
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Sherry can be found at divorcetownusa.com, Sherry Hardin. And we love having her there, and you can find out more about her at that website. Now, Marcella's got some information for us coming up, our next show, and some resources, free resources for you. So hang on, folks, don't go anywhere yet.
Absolutely. So very quickly, we'll take you through some resources. These are things that are available to you for free, so please take advantage of them. You can go to divorcetownusa.com and download your free Divorcetown Roadmap. This will help with some different avenues, some different options, so that you don't have to go the traditional expensive litigated route and have a happier, healthier divorce process. To get you started on the financial side of things, Lisa has also created a free divorce financial fitness kit, which you can download again at divorcemoneymatters.com. Right on the homepage, just click it. It's a working spreadsheet that you can use for collecting documents and also things you might want to get together for asking an attorney when you meet with them. So what do we have on tap? Oh, I do want to tell you also about the support group, because we do have a meeting coming up on May 5th at noon, and the RSVPs for that do close tomorrow. And we do try to meet twice a month, once during the day, once in the evening, and that can be done accessed through meetup.com. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about when kids act out during divorce. And to help us with that is a child specialist. She's also the co-founder of the Upside Down Divorce, which is a child first divorce process. So Tracy is going to be an excellent resource, and she will help us next week with that topic, when kids act out during divorce. It's been awesome having all of you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We cannot wait to see you again next week. Thank you to everyone.
See you next week. Same time, same place.